Hello,
Hello.
back
Hello,
again.
Lewis. Yeah, thank you very much for coming back for re-record number 2.
No, I'm glad to be back. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
That's all right. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Lewis, and I'm an alcoholic. That just comes into my mind straight away. And I live in Burnham. I met Angie through somewhere house 11 years ago, nearly to the day.
Wow.
Which is how long I've been in Burnham, and I am a writer. And I run a book festival now, and I also work with adults with autism.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, all of a sudden my brain started going 100 miles an hour. So first things first, I want to ask, when's the book festival for next year? Have you booked it or not?
We have. It is May the 19th.
Is that a Saturday?
It is a Friday and a Saturday, so the 19th
Okay.
and 20th, I believe.
And that's in Burnham?
And that is in Burnham. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
fantastic.
I must put that in my diary. And what have you got planned for it?
Well, so far, not a lot. We're still in the kind of early days of it. We've got a competition, a writing competition, which is about to go live.
Okay.
Interested in taking part in that. And it's got 3 categories. We've got an under sort of up to 12, and then 13 to 18, and then adults.
Okay.
I was thinking about this morning when I was doing my meditation, which is about our podcasts, mini books.
It's a good question.
In the future, will we see them as books rather than a formal book? I mean, I write as well, so I find it hard to call myself a writer. I am practicing. I am an author. I am a writer. I don't know what else to say, and I'm saying it in my head, but our podcast part of that?
I think it's interesting because, I mean, I often think about how books have turned into TV and films and things like that. You know, that's the way the art has progressed, hasn't it? And
for sure, that's it. So is our podcast going to become something similar?
I think that if it was, it would be like a stream of consciousness. I suppose you can plan it and you can decide what you're going to do, or it can be. But to me, it feels more like a stream of consciousness, writing. But then writing often is, isn't it? I think. Although I found that the more and more that I write, the more and more that I need to plan. That's just happened over time.
So, what sort of things do you write?
So I write lots of different things. I've written plays. I've written sort of semi-autobiographical fiction.
Okay.
Largely autobiographical fiction. And then I write fiction as well. Often the themes are around kind of things in my life, like addiction is a big theme that comes across in it. Or sort of class is a theme in a lot of the things that I write. But I write lots of different things in different ways. Poetry as well. I write poetry. I've got a few poems published.
Where do you get a poem published?
Journals, magazines, books, anthologies.
Somebody sent me a poem, and it's an amazing poem, and I think he needs to get it published. It's a beautiful poem, and it's even today. It's in the front of my.
Tell them to enter the competition.
Hey, I'll do that actually. I will. I might even enter on his behalf.
Who are the judges for the competition?
So we've got there's different stages.
Yeah.
And the first stage, there's a few writers, including me, that are on the committee that sort of whittle it down.
Okay.
From the thousands and thousands that we hope to get.
Of course.
we got hundreds last year. So
amazing.
So it was, for a first year, that was pretty good.
Very good.
And it was really time consuming for us. So we've kind of tweaked how we're going to do it this year to hopefully streamline it a little bit. And then after that, we employ writers, sort of professional writers. Last year, we had Jessica Andrews, who's just a fantastic fiction writer who lives in Bristol, in the northeast. She was one of them. We had a couple of just professional writers jotting it down from sort of the last 20 or something like that. I don't know how many we're left with.
Have you had any funding for this? Or is it all fundraising, or have you got anything from the Arts Council?
We haven't got anything from the Arts Council. We got some from trying to think now. We got some from the council. We got some from the power plant. They funded quite a lot.
Hinkley.
Yeah, they funded quite a lot for the last year.
Oh, brilliant.
So we were going to apply to them again, and hopefully get some more. But we're doing all right, to be honest. I mean, we all the funding we applied for last year we got,
which is great.
Which is rare.
Yeah, yeah,
very.
But it's left us in a good stead because we made a loss last year, which we expected to do. It's kind of hard not to really to drum up enough support and get people to come along, especially the first one. But we did bring some money in, and so we're left. We've got the bare bones of the next one anyway, in funding.
And I mean, writing's quite I mean, I know because I find it. I mean, I love writing. I absolutely love writing, but it's the discipline of putting yourself, like you said about the planning. How do I plan to write a book? How do I plan to take the time out of my day to do that? And do things like this as well, and.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm in like an existential crisis as far as writing goes. It's like, I really am I'm properly. I sat in the shed yesterday. I had a day off yesterday. I wasn't working, and I just sort of sat in the shed, and I was like, I need to write. And I've been like this for
This is your writing shed.
This is my writing shed, yeah. And I've been like this for kind of weeks now. And I was sat there, and I read stuff, and I think, okay, this is okay, and I'm doing it. And then just something happens in my head that just puts this seed of self-doubt, and then I'm sort of thrown again, and that's where I'm at the moment.
Just sort of writer's block, where you just can't. That how you describe it.
I don't know if it's a block. I think it's more about criticism. It's really? The internal critic that goes on about, is this good enough? Can I do this? Can I? So like the book that I'm writing at the moment, it's very short, but I kind of want it to be short. I want it to be to the point, short, done, dusted, and I've got another idea for something else I want to do, and it's like. I haven't got the time. Well, I have got the time. This is what we were talking about before. I have got the time to sit down and do it. But then, like you say, I go back and rewrite. I do rewrites and rewrites and rewrites and rewrites until I send it off to the publisher. And it's that overthinking. I think the overthinker gets in the way before you actually get to the point where you can get it to the publisher, if you see what I'm saying.
I think there's time in this space, isn't there? You can have the time to do something. I mean, if I look at my day, I've got the time, I've got pockets of time where I can do things, but have I got the space in my brain to do it is another thing entirely.
Yeah. And I imagine the creativity as well, because although you might have 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours spare in the day, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be creative at that point.
Well, yeah, exactly. And just the stuff of life that affects you. We were talking before that I've just come back off holiday and it's been a week, but I'm still not over it.
Right.
So trying to kind of find the space where you're sort of just getting over jet lag, whatever.
Yeah.
When you're coming back. It's things like that. And work stuff, the stuff from work that you bring home with you. And
of course,
I find that I really need clear time and space to be able to write well. And at the moment, there's lots of things that are in the way, like the book festival. That's kind of
filling up.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that, and I can identify in that sense of the stuff going on for me that I'm kind of processing. Quite a lot of stuff going on for me that I'm processing at the moment, and I know I need to put that time into that and not put that time into writing my book or my next book. You see what I'm saying? Because it is that I don't have enough brain space to do it all, and work, and be a mum, and be a granny, and be a friend, and.
And while that happens, I find that sometimes I'm quite good at dealing with that and accepting that that's the way things are. And then other times there's little bits in my head that are going, maybe you just can't write anymore. Maybe you've just got to this point. Maybe you've aged to that point where your brain has degraded enough. This is where I'm at. This is what I mean by an existential crisis. Your brain has degraded enough that you can't write now. And that's that. And I've been here before. I know
maybe you should write a book about how to be a writer.
Well, maybe,
or how to, I don't know.
That would be a good comedy sketch, though, wouldn't it? Because that bit about going back to the shed and having that whole conversation in the shed about me and how I'm feeling and that. And it's a very present book, that would be, wouldn't it, if you did that?
Yeah. I mean, I've tried to write things like that before, but don't throw any other ideas into it at the moment.
The play that you did, the one that I came to see in Bath,
oh, yeah.
That was very much like that, wasn't it? It was I can't even remember what it's called. I apologise, but
it was What You Will. It was an adaptation, a sort of complete modern rewrite.
Yeah, but it was in the moment. Everything was in that moment, and I thought and in a sense, that's what you're talking about. It's that moment. It's those moments in time that you kind of get just the here and now, wasn't it? Really, and it was
neurotic, I suppose, isn't it? That's what it is, isn't it? You know, that
neurosis. Yeah.
It's very present, isn't it?
But is the neurosis when it's you're overthinking stuff? Do you overthink it, or do you just not give yourself the time to think it?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it?
I definitely feel like at the moment there's some overthinking going on.
Yeah.
But I've not been able to arrest it.
Yeah.
And I think that I've got like sort of 4 or 5 projects that are quite far through the process, but they're just not.
So you're working on multiple things.
I've been working on for many years, so it's just that they've got to a point where a lot of them are kind of close.
Yeah.
In some respects close, anyway. In other respects, quite far away. That's how it feels at the moment. And so I don't really know where. I've not sort of landed on one. I'm not sort of focused on one.
I don't do that. I focus on one.
Yeah.
I keep all the other ideas. I might add to them in the sense of I might think, oh yeah, I need to add that or whatever, but I only focus on one thing at a time, and to the beginning, the middle, and the end. I will add the ideas in other places, but that is my project.
How do you keep track of your ideas?
I write notes.
Okay.
I write notes. I'm a prolific note writer.
Yeah.
If you look on my phone, I have notes.
Really? I do a lot of that.
I do that.
But
all
I
the time.
Back through it, I've got thousands of notes that say random things.
No.
What does that mean?
I put like ideas for books, idea for this book, idea for that book. So if it comes up, I do it.
I started a destinations one. So at one point of places to go on holiday.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if I was watching something on TV, sorry, this is a complete sidetrack, but
it's fine.
If I was watching like a TV show or a film, or someone said to me, "Oh, went to this place and it was really good," I've always written it down.
And have you been to them all?
I haven't been to any of them.
But why not?
Because work and life gets in the way.
That's similar to what you're implying, though, isn't it? Other things get in the way. But when do we prioritise the things that are important to us?
I will get to them, I think, and I hope. But at the minute, it's quite fun writing the list and looking at them online.
Yeah.
So if I was you, I would literally today go back, look at that list, see one of them that is possible, and just do it. Just do it, because honestly, if you don't, those things just will pass.
But I follow you on Instagram, and I absolutely love following you on Instagram, because I feel really proud of what you've achieved, but also I feel proud that you're doing the things like what you've just said to Mike. And I think, first of all, I go, how the hell does he afford it? That's the first thing. And then I think, I want him to be my travel agent.
I quite like doing that. So
yeah.
But I've just done that. That was what we did in America, really. It was just be a travel agent. It's amazing how many people come to you and go, how do you afford that? That's the first question that people have. And it used to really bother me, because I used to think, used to get a bit sort of defensive about it. And now I just feel quite proud that I can, I do the things that I need to do
what you want to do.
It's not the things that I do don't cost a lot of money. They're not. America wasn't cheap. Did Kilimanjaro earlier in the year. That wasn't cheap. But then there's other holidays, like where we went to Estonia for a few days, and that would have cost amazing. Like £200, for flights, accommodation, even car parking. That honestly, it's so cheap.
Yeah.
Do you plan quite far in advance when you're going somewhere?
Sometimes and sometimes not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know some people plan like a year or 2 years in advance because it's so much cheaper.
Well, it used to be.
It's not anymore.
COVID kind of changed things a bit. I managed to get away in the gaps of COVID, and afterwards, what I started to notice was, it used to be that if you were to leave it like a month before and booked a month before, it would be quite expensive.
Yeah.
But I found after COVID, a month before was just as cheap as if you were booking in sort of 6 or 7 months before.
Okay.
That's where it is now, or that's where it has been. And I would say that now, actually, it's starting to get more expensive. Right. And I think that is just the effect of the years that we've been through, like flights and things like that, more expensive. Fuel costs, a big one. Like if you want to fly somewhere further away now, unless it's a really like New York, where there's so many flights, and it's always going to be busy. if you want to go somewhere like Nepal, which is where I want to go, it is like nearly twice as much as
Really?
it was.
Wow.
It's really hard to get like a deal. I went like 3 years ago to Nepal and paid about £400 for flights, which is really cheap. But I shopped around for it. It's like £800 now.
Yeah,
That's looking around. Yeah, that's shopping around.
Yeah. Dave Williams playing in India next year. So I know, and I would really, I'd love to go to India, but I don't want to go on. I'm nervous because I'm not the best traveller because of my health. I don't want it to get in the way of what we're doing. I don't want to just get in the way. And so on Sunday when they were all talking about it, it was like, Dave's going to probably go, and Tim, Victoria's husband's going to go. And I'm sat there, and there's a part of me that's envious. I want them to go, but I also want to go with them. But I'm a bit nervous about that extended travel in a country that I'm awful with smells. I'm really bad. And I know I can wear a mask now and nobody would think there's anything bad of me, but that would be my only way I'd probably cope. And also, I hate poverty. I hate watching people struggle. It emotionally really touches me.
That is one of the things that the more and more that I've travelled over the years, the harder it's got in some respects, because you start to feel a real sense of guilt.
Yeah.
You've got this freedom in this country to be able to just, and I'm in like a low paid job, really, I'm on the lower rung. That's the sort of job I'm doing. But I can still afford to go to Nepal. I can still afford, it's just crazy to think that.
Yeah.
Saving and doing what you need to do. But then you go somewhere and just see people living normal lives, but just on a much lower budget. The idea of sort of traveling to the UK would be like, just wouldn't even be a dream.
Yeah,
for a lot of people.
just be out of completely, unaffordable.
Yeah, sad to see that. And you see that everywhere. I mean, you see it in America as well. You see
that
in America.
Well, yeah. I mean, when we went to Austin, we went down this road. Oh, homelessness was awful. And William says it's got worse. And in LA, I mean, it's like
It's horrific in LA.
Yeah, and in San Francisco, it's horrendous. Apparently, really awful. And you think, wow, why is that happening?
And then you go to somewhere like New York, where obviously it's there in pockets, but at the same time, it's become such a cosmopolitan, expensive city. It's on another planet, isn't it? I mean, compared to a lot of America, it's that's something I noticed about New York as well. That the prices have just shot up. I was speaking to a taxi driver, and he was saying, "Yeah, it's just gone up, and people are still willing to pay. And until people stop, it'll just keep going up. And that's what it feels like. It feels obscene.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel kind of.
Do you not feel that that's like what it is here as well, though, to a certain degree? There's an acceptance that we're going to go out and spend X amount of pounds on something, and we're going to do that. I mean, I suppose you look at the fuel. They want to call it a crisis. I'm not sure what to call it, but it's like people will still have their lights on. People will still put their heating on. People, do you know?
I think it comes back to the whole inflation thing in terms of, because people are willing to pay the prices that they pay, that's where we end up with this uncontrolled inflation, which is, what we're going through at the moment. And I'm far from an economist. I like reading about this stuff. And that's where the issue is at the minute, is everybody has come out of lockdown. A lot of people have come out with pockets of money that they haven't spent on things like holidays or eating out for the best part of 2 years, and they're now wanting to spend this money, and that's kind of what most analysts think has caused inflation.
Yeah.
And of course, inflation happens when there's not enough of certain things, or people are willing to pay more than over the odds. And that's what we've seen with the housing market, really. The housing market for the last 18 months has been astronomical. You've seen houses go up by, £100,000 compared to what it was 18 months ago. In some places more. And that's simply because people are willing to pay it. And everybody's now talking about a housing market crash. Well, that's only going to happen if people stop buying houses. And I'm not sure people will stop buying houses, but I think prices will come down as a result of interest rates going up. We're going to have to see what happens. But I think over the next 12 months, I think things are going to get more difficult because people are going to have less money available. Rents are going up. Everything's going up in costs. We've only got to look at the gas and electric crisis, if you will, to see that people are going to be struggling.
I mean, is it a crisis as well? I mean,
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure it is.
It's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because it was sold as a crisis, and it came across as a crisis, and prices did go up. But then, obviously, there was lots of kind of funding put into it, and people were. I mean, I don't know whether ours has gone up. I don't. People at work that I'm speaking to have not really. In fact, people at work have been saying theirs hasn't gone up. I'm a bit confused. I feel like and some people have said it has gone up.
Yeah.
But then others are saying it hasn't gone up. It's just.
In my opinion, I think that the gas and electric. I am going to use the word crisis because I think we are in a position where prices have gone up. But I think what a lot of people don't realise is how gas and electric is billed. You go onto one of these price comparison websites and you put in your address and you choose which one is the cheapest. Well, what you're comparing is monthly price. So you might see one supplier offers it for £50 a month and another offers it for £75 and another offers it for £100 a month. Well, everyone's going to go with the one that's telling you that it's going to cost you £50 a month because everybody always, it's always a race to the bottom. What's the cheapest I can get away with? What they don't compare is what the unit rate is. So what is your actual cost per unit of electric and gas? Because the monthly cost is an estimate of what you're likely to spend over 12 months, and then you divide it by 12. Everybody always uses more gas and electric in the winter because you have the lights on more. You might cook more. You've also got your heating on more in the winter, in the colder months. And I think suppliers are wrong to advertise their prices by monthly payment. It should be done by we charge this per unit. This means on average you'll pay this per month, because that's a true comparison. You don't go and shop for a fridge or a car based on what the monthly payment is. You shop based on what the actual price you're paying for it is.
But is that because people are not necessarily are naive to a certain degree about? Because I do it unit and daily price, daily cost, because I know that. But some people perhaps have not been taught that.
I think you're spot on, and I think suppliers hide this fact. I don't think they advertise it in the correct way. I don't know if you've ever looked, but if you try to go on, the likes of British Gas or EDF's website and try and find out what their unit price is, it's really hard.
It is hard.
And I think that's wrong.
But I think that's hard because, they do. They hide it. I think a lot of people are not overt about the truth.
Yeah.
The
And
true
I
cost
don't
behind
know
it.
why the government and the Advertising Standards Agency have not got onto this, because I think it's wrong. You're not clearly advertising what something is costing. And going back to what you were saying, Lewis, about people not being affected, I think you're right. But at the moment, prices have artificially been brought down by this payments being made towards our bills for the next 6 months. Come April, I think we're all going to see, unless prices for some reason come down dramatically, I think from April next year, I think we're all going to be in for a shock.
Well, and that money's coming from somewhere anyway.
It's tax.
Anyway,
Yeah.
It's a false economy, really.
Well, it's a bit like
I think it's people that are the difference between people that are paying more or less is probably what they were paying in the first place. Because actually thinking about it, somebody at work was telling me how much she was paying, and I was thinking, "You got to pay that a month?" She said, "Yeah, mine hasn't gone up." I'm not surprised it hasn't gone up because you're paying out for the odds in the first place. So I think that,
which is your point.
My point is that it might be that their account is actually really high in credit. And that's the problem. Is people don't. I remember my nan. She used to put. She had one of those cards where you go into the supermarket and you put the money on, and she always used to put on. I want to say something like £50 a month. And sadly, she passed away. And when she passed away, she had something like £1,000 in credit. Well, she didn't use that a year in electric. And you think, well, that's because she's been told by her supplier that she should pay £50 a month, or whatever the figure was. I don't remember. And actually, all she was doing was putting money in the pockets of this supplier when that isn't what she was using, not what it was actually costing. I just think that's wrong on so many levels.
Yeah, it is.
And they're making money.
Yeah, because they've got money in their bank. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because our accountant at work said to me last week, the electricity company's got £3,500 of your money, and I went, sorry. it hadn't been picked up by somebody. And it was like, she said, what do you want me to do? And I said, well, ask for it back. Why are they sitting on £3,500 of our money and why aren't we got it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Isn't this the problems of privatisation though? Because it's a service that's necessary. It's not a service that is. It's not, because I was thinking about it as you were speaking, and I was thinking, well, you can go to one shop and pay 55p for a Snickers, and another shop and pay £1.20 for a Snickers or more. That's business.
It is,
and the troubles of handing over that business to business people, supposedly to streamline it, privatisation.
I hear what you're saying. I actually don't think it would change. I mean, the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, he came out a few weeks ago and said, if Labour get into power, they're going to create a national-owned, government-owned utility company. Well, you have to go back and look at where the cost of gas and oil and electric is coming from. Well, it's not coming from the likes of British Gas or Octopus or any of the other utility companies out there. It's actually coming from the manufacturers of this stuff, the likes of BP, the likes of Shell. They're the ones that are actually
determining the prices.
They're the ones that are choosing the prices.
But they're not the ones that are hiding the unit cost.
No, you're right. They're not.
And that's where the business is.
It is. But I think if you were to make a step change into what it actually costs, you've got to look at how you change that model, the manufacturers, and how they do it. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that's ever going to change.
But doesn't that come back to, just changing the subject slightly from energy and politics as such, it comes back to, say, the National Health Service. I run a tight ship in my business and I'm very aware of, but some people don't. And the National Health Service is a business. It's fundamentally, it is a business. Not, but it is.
It's a very poorly run business.
But that's the problem. If you think about how, would you run your business the way they run the NHS? And no, you would. If you're a good business person, you wouldn't. And so that argument about, do we have businesses that run, I think in some places you need proper business people at the top to run certain things, and other things perhaps, like you are suggesting, that perhaps you don't, and you could nationalise it. But it's a grey area, isn't it? What is it that I mean, the National Health Service is run very poorly.
It is.
You go in the waste, just the pure waste,
and everything. Yeah.
And lots of businesses are as well. And I think that the difficulty is finding that the business people that are good at it, whether you're the NHS or whether it's private, is exactly the same. And I think that historically, I would say that if you're running things as a business, i.e. for a profit with shareholders, that you've not necessarily got the right motive. And when you're talking about health, I know it's a really difficult subject, and there is other countries that run things slightly differently. It's a sort of NHS and sort of not an NHS that might work better. There might be better solutions, but I do worry about privatisation.
I don't think you should privatise the NHS, but I think what you need to do is look at the leadership in the NHS. So, for example, when I worked in the
country,
well, perhaps, but when I worked for the NHS, if you've been like in the team for like 4 or 5 years, you got promoted. It was a natural promotion. It wasn't actually not
based on merit.
It wasn't based on your qualities or your qualifications necessarily, or whether so you'd have a manager that was actually, say, a nurse. Well, that's all very well, but what do they know about management? And then then that manager becomes the director of the local service. What do they know about directing? Okay, they've got hands-on experience, but truthfully, I mean, we've all done it, haven't we? We've worked for somebody and thought, why the bloody hell are they doing that?
More often than not, my experience, which I admit is limited, is people coming into a business as business people. We've experienced this with the National Autistic Society. People came in as business people to streamline the business and they just made the problem worse.
Yeah.
They were getting. It was just a wasted wage. They were getting in people's ways. They hadn't the experience of working with the people that we're dealing with. So they don't know anything about the front line.
No.
And I think that's the issue is finding somebody that has got that business experience, but has also got
the other experience.
Someone that's worked their way up is probably the best.
Yeah, but they've got to still then have the capacity and the skills to be able to do that. And I think that's sadly where we've gone wrong slightly. But did you watch, sorry, I'm changing the subject again. Did you watch that program last night about that farm for autistic people?
No.
It was this lady had a child who was autistic, and he became, it was too difficult for her to look after him. His behavior was deteriorated as he got older, and she couldn't handle it. And he sadly had to go into a home, but he's happy there. But she wanted to use the farm to help people with autism. Definitely worth a watch.
Sounds good.
It was really interesting how that, and she's leaving it as that's her legacy. That's what she's going to do. So people are going to take over. But it was a lovely moment to see that. But once again, that is about somebody who's had a lived experience and gone on to do something. But she's also got an informed lived experience. I know that sounds a bit wonky, but she knows how to run the farm. She knows the best way of running the farm and the business and all of that. And she knows about autism. And it's bringing all of those skills together to be able to be a good business person. And I think sometimes there was a thing on about the NHS up north. I think I might have mentioned this before on a podcast, but there's an NHS up north, and the A&E department was so overwhelmed with people coming to A&E, they did not know how to manage it. So they decided that they were going to have almost like a car park service. So you'd go to the car park and you say, I'm coming to A&E because I've got a sore throat. And they go, that's okay, but actually you need to go and see your GP. So go back and see your GP. And then somebody come in and say, well, I've got a little cut on my finger. Yeah, put a plaster on it. Off you go. So it was creating a level where people were taking responsibility instead of it always coming back to the A&E department. And it amazingly changed the whole people's perspective of what an A&E department is. And that actually they weren't just turning up because they got a sore throat. You got a doctor for that.
Yeah.
If you can't go to the pharmacist. The pharmacist can treat that for you. That's what we're trying to do.
Pharmacists are better than doctors now. I
agree.
But it is that whole thing at the moment with the NHS, with going to the doctor and the doctor telling you to go to the hospital, and and then the hospital sending you back. It's
well, there's so many GP
mess,
surgeries still that they don't want patients in their waiting room. They don't want patients coming in to see them. It's video, or more often telephone calls. And you think, how is that providing care?
Well, see, I disagree with you, because I think there's a level where you can triage people that way. I'm not sure it's always the right way to triage everybody, because some people have emotional needs and it's very difficult to discuss that down the phone with somebody. But at the beginning of COVID, I had something going on for me that was not very pleasant. And I called the doctors and they said, we'll get a doctor to call you. And, I broke down on the phone. I was crying on the phone, and she said, you need to come and see me. I need to see you face to face. Fine, thank you. But I think that's the bit. It's having a doctor can make an informed decision based on the evidence that you're giving them. But can you communicate that?
And that's the bit that I was going to pick up on is, that it's all well and good because you're able, that emotion came out and you're able to really clearly explain over the phone. But I think there's a lot of people out there who are just going to suffer.
Yeah.
I mean, I've come round to it. I've come round to the idea of other ways because they need it. But I think in an ideal world, definitely it would be better if you could see face to face.
Yeah. I went to my doctor's surgery yesterday for a simple blood test. And I was sat in there and, there was nobody else in there. Nobody came, nobody left. And I just think you've got this building, which is costing money, that you're not actually seeing anybody in. So you think, well, that's now a waste of money. Let's get rid of the building or get a smaller building, and then you could employ another doctor or another nurse or whatever it might be. But I've also found with my doctor's surgery that they do the whole triage thing, but 9 times out of 10, the person that's triaging is the receptionist. And now, I'm not trying to belittle anybody, but what qualification do they have to be able to triage?
And why should you have to tell them? Why should you have to tell them what's wrong with you?
Exactly, that's it. And I really do think that's wrong. The other thing that they do is, they direct you to their website where you have to complete their form to be able to even get to the point where you can telephone and be triaged. Well, unless you're on there at dead on 8 a.m., by about 8:05, it's closed because they're supposedly full. And I think, well, how does that work for people that work nights or they're on the school run? Or
Does it have a set time to open and close then? Does
Yeah.
it open at 8 o'clock?
It opens
And by
at 8
8:15,
a.m.
it's
by not even 8:15. By 8:05, they've closed it.
But does that come back to where resilience? Where are people's resilience about? I suppose it comes. When I said to you, "God, how do you afford?" and you were saying, "Oh, it used to annoy you about things like that." And actually, the fact is you work bloody hard to get that money together to be able to go on your holidays and your adventures and things like that. And that's a form of resilience, isn't it? You go without other things so that you can do that. I'm not saying you have a poor life, but and it's the same as
we haven't got our heating on yet.
No, and we haven't got our heating on yet. I know I've put the Arga on because I've got no hot water otherwise, but I haven't had that. But it's not been on 3 weeks. Is it about 3 weeks I turned the Arga on? And we've not had any hot water since April. So we've been showering and whatever.
Wim Hof, you did the Wim Hof way.
No, but it's about that bit about resilience. Have we lost our ability to be resilient as individuals? So you're in recovery. You've worked really hard to sustain your recovery. Is that down to your resilience, or is that down to, I don't know, what else would it be down to?
I don't know. I don't know. Resilience. I think it is resilience. I think, it is being determined to do something and do the things that you need to do to change. That's what it comes down to.
But it's also like your electricity and gas. If you don't want to pay so much, turn your bloody lights off.
Yeah.
If you don't want to have a big gas bill, put a jumper on.
Well, it's interesting. The whole fuel thing is interesting because it does make you reevaluate what you're doing.
Exactly.
It's what you value in life, isn't it?
I mean, Beck is always, I'm like one of these people that walks around the house in my shorts and a t-shirt. So like in the winter, like I want the heating on. That's how I've been until now. Whereas Beck's not like that at all. She's like, put a blanket on, wear a blanket, have a jumper, Her parents bought me a blanket for the shed, and that's And so this year I'm like looking at it like, okay, this is right. This is what I should be doing. It's a sort of change.
But that's what it was like when I was a kid.
Maybe it's nice to see those things and nice to kind of recognize what we need and what we don't.
Yeah. So as a kid, we didn't have heating. In fact, when Dave and I first got together, we had a house in Shipham and we didn't have heating in there. We put central heating in eventually, but we didn't have heating. You'd scrape the ice off the inside of the window. It was blooming freezing, but it didn't do us any harm. And we were poor. We had no money. So we were careful about the light being on. And, if we thought about going somewhere, how much it would cost, we'd take the kids up on the hill and go for hikes and cook sausages in a frying pan on a little fire and do things like that. We did all of that. We certainly did not take them to the movies because we couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
We did not go on fancy holidays. We went camping. We did all of that. And I think that's a level of resilience that sometimes we don't have.
I think you're right. I think people have I think people's views have definitely changed, and what people value and spend money on, all of those kind of things have definitely changed. And I think over the next 12 months, people are going to be, or have to be rather, more cautious about,
But why not all the time?
I think it's almost, again, it almost comes back to education around, what do you enjoy in life? Do you like going on your holiday? Do you like having your takeaway and going to the cinema? Well, you're going to have to cut back a little bit on your gas and electric. I had a chat with somebody the other day who rents property, and they were saying to me that, they like to have their heating at 25 degrees. I mean, that's like the weather you get in the Caribbean. Why on earth would you? I was in their house and it was stifling. It was uncomfortable. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, we love this." And I'm thinking, how expensive is this to run? I'd rather do other things.
I was actually reading that 25 degrees is a really bad temperature to put it at.
It's very unhealthy.
It's very hard to keep the temperature. If you've got a thermostat, it's very hard to keep it at that. So it just basically means your heating's on the whole time.
Yeah.
So it just costs an absolute fortune.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of people like that. And I notice this because I work in houses with people, and the people that I work with determine what the temperature is usually in the houses where I work. And, some people are at 19, and some people are at 30.
Yeah.
At 30.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just insane. I walk into houses sometimes where I work, and honestly, you just feel like you're going to be sick.
But who's paying the bill?
Well, exactly. So there's no.
And is there a bit about actually, well, I'm in this care home, or I'm in this thing, or I'm entitled to this, the level of entitlement, than it is about if they're paying their own bills, that's their prerogative to do so. But if they're not, and somebody else is paying the bills, is there a level of entitlement there? I mean,
it's just thoughtlessness, isn't it? It's or at worst, knowing that you're not paying the bills and
you're taking advantage. Yeah. We had somebody that came on, was staying in the holiday cottage for a while, and they had every single light on, every heating on, the lot, and we said we'd pay the bills. And in the end, I said to them, "I'm not paying your bill. You pay your own bill. I'm not doing that. I'll take a cut in the rent.
Yeah,
but you're paying your own bill." And all of a sudden, the lights went off, and the heating went off. And do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's amazing how people's attitudes will change when it's them that's paying the bill. For sure.
Well, it's a bit like if you asked everybody to go to the dentist and you've got to pay, when they've changed it, haven't they? Very few people can go to an NHS dentist now, but you have to pay to go, and it's like a proper fee rather than it's subsidised by the NHS.
Yeah.
They don't go as much.
That's right.
I mean, I went yesterday actually to the dentist, and it's the same one.
Yep.
In Barrow, and he's really good. He's so good. And I actually had this conversation with him. I said, "Are you going to go private?"
Yeah.
They all seem to be going private, and he said, "No, I've got my thoughts and feelings on that. As far as I'm concerned, this is how I want it to stay."
Yeah.
And it was like 20 quid. It's like 20 quid, and then I had to have a fill in, so it's like 65 quid or something like that. But I know that other people have really struggled have lost their dentist. I was supporting who's autistic, who's on benefits, has had to go private, which to me just seems, it's different if I had to go private, someone who's working, but this is somebody who can't work, who's sort of struggling.
But would you give up your space for your client to take that space?
I like my dentist.
Yeah, but that's my point. My point is it's a bit like in the rehab we have private clients, and we have people from the NHS and people from social care and justice system and all of that. And we always charged everybody the same, whatever your background was. We don't anymore. We changed that because for insurance purposes and various other bits and pieces. But some rehabs, you go to rehab and you'll get the NHS is paying £750 for you to be there, and you're a private client and you're paying £3,500 to be there for a week, and you think that can't be right.
Drastically different, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's that loyalty, isn't it? It's first come, first served in our business, and that's how I've always worked. I don't work on the principle. What's that?
That is you.
How did that come on?
The song just came on.
Yeah, that's really odd. It was fun.
For
that you can find me, but it comes back to that bit about do you treat people differently, or I'm willing to give up my NHS slot, whatever, and I'll pay to go private because I am in a very fortunate position now that I can do that. And if I can go private, I will go private over going NHS because I think that releases a space for somebody else.
It's a good way to look at it.
I mean, is it just that, or is it that private is just better as well?
No, not at all.
Is it better though?
What
do we define as better?
Because not necessarily.
I don't know. Yeah,
no, I don't know. I don't even know what a private dentist would cost. And I think if I knew, maybe I'd be tempted to give up my NHS space and go private. But I actually have no idea what it would cost.
It basically triples. Yeah, that's what it seems to me.
Yeah, but you can afford 60 quid. Or
I'm not saying that I can't. What I'm saying is I don't know what. I don't know what it costs because there's no comparison website to go on and go, right, what does private dentistry cost? Maybe that's a business idea to look at. I've always had an NHS dentist. I'm quite fortunate. Where I live, I lived there 10 years now, and every single time I go to the dentist, which is every 6 months or whatever it is, I've not seen the same dentist for 10 years.
Really?
But every time I go, the dentist that I see says, "Oh, this will be the last time you see me." And I always make a joke with them. It's the first time and the last time I see you, because it's just a revolving door of NHS dentists because of this change the government have made.
I had the same dentist from the age of 15 until about 3 years ago. And then 3 years ago, he retired, sadly. And since then, I've had 2 other dentists, but they've turned, the whole surgery is private, other than one dentist.
And that's pretty much the one I go to. It's a big practice in Weston, and I think they had something like 20 dentists, and I think maybe 18 were NHS. 2 were private. It's completely flipped now. I think it's 2 that are NHS and 18 that are private. And it always made me laugh because you walk into their reception and there's a receptionist for each dentist.
Why?
Waste of money.
Yeah, no,
waste of money that is.
Don't you think there's just something a little bit kind of disconcerting about the different experiences that we have, though? I mean, you describe that experience, you describe your experience. I've had 2 dentists my whole life. One that I had when I was living in the Midlands. I didn't really go to him in the last few years because I was drinking. I didn't care. And then when I moved down to Burnham, to somewhere house, I set me up at their own dentist, and I've been with him since. And I haven't seen any other dentist. Every time I've been to the dentist, I've seen the same dentist.
Yeah.
Every time I come in, he says, how's the not drinking? And
does he really? Oh, bless him.
And then he'll talk about the books and things like that. I've got like a really nice relationship.
Yeah.
And it used to be like that at the doctors as well.
Oh yeah.
So your description of the dentist to me is my description of the doctors now. That you go to the doctors and you never see the same doctor. It's just a different locum, and then the next one you get says, "I can't believe the last one did that."
Yeah,
I've had that happen so many times. It's just like the doctors.
I think that's why I've paid to go private, certainly for my health issue that I've got now, because I wanted to see the same person. I wanted continuity of care. And so I have that for that. But my doctors, I find they're very good at, I might not see the same doctor twice or 3 times, but they do read up on my notes and make sure that they're informed. And I think that's any practitioner's responsibility, whatever you do, providing the person before has written their notes up properly.
But it doesn't happen. It certainly doesn't happen in my experience at the doctors in Burnham. I mean, they're chronic for not reading the notes. You go in there and I have to go over the same thing again and again every single time. I'm like, well, haven't you got the notes? And they're like, hold on a sec, let me just read it. Like, why?
Sorry.
Why don't they just take literally 2 or 3 minutes? If you don't want me to say it, I won't say it.
Go on.
If they just take, to me, this is management of it, isn't it? If they just take 2 or 3 minutes to read the notes before you go in, rather than 2 or 3 minutes when you're in there. Like, that's just common sense to me. I feel like the management, but they've been taken over now by a management.
Well, a management company. I offered when they went into. I said, I'm really happy to come and help you. I mean, it's the same criteria under which I work with anyway. I'd love to have gone in there and helped them out. And I'd have done it for nothing, because it's those skills, and it's just people skills, but also that bit about giving people the time to be able to do that. Because very often the demands of the GPs, you've got a 10-minute slot, you've got to see that person, and they don't give themselves, and then somebody sits in there for 25 minutes, and because they need to be in there for 25 minutes, and then you've been sat there for 25 minutes in the waiting room, and all they want to do is stop you from being stressed about sat there and being overweight. I've got to be truthful with you. Cheddar Medical Centre is the best. They are brilliant. They have done a fantastic job through COVID. I cannot fault them. And yet, I know for a fact that you sit on, I don't do Facebook. I do Facebook, but I don't know that I do Facebook. That you look at these things, and these comments that people make are awful. And actually, I cannot say that I've had anything but a positive experience with them. So
I think it's really good, and I question why that's not the same that service that everybody gets. Really, a little funny story that I've got is when I first moved to Weston, I went and signed up to my local doctor's surgery, and again, a bit like you, I've never seen the same doctor more than once, and I had to have a procedure on my ear about 5 years ago now, and when I was seeing the person at the hospital, they always ask, oh, who's your GP? And I said, oh, it's so and so surgery. And they said, oh, what's the doctor's name? And I'm like, well, I don't see a doctor. And I sort of quickly got my phone out and just Googled the practice. And at the bottom of their website, it says Dr. John. So I thought, oh, okay. Is that like a collective name for the doctors? You know, like a Joe Bloggs is a Dr. John that's in charge of this practice. So I gave the name Dr. John. And every time I've gone and seen someone, and they've asked me who my doctor, I've always said, oh, it's Dr. John. Because, I just thought, well, that's just...
There is a Dr. John. Did you know that at Winscombe? And there's a Dr. John in Weston as well, because the female equivalent.
This may or may not be true, but I've always used it. Anyway, I used it recently. And they said, well, Dr. John, that's not a real name.
That is the character of a dystopian novel, if ever there was.
That's what when I went recently and they said, oh, doctor's name, I did the whole thing again saying, oh, Dr. John. And they said,
retired now.
They said, oh, Dr. John doesn't exist. He's not in the, he's not got a medical license or something, they said. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't know who it is then. I've no idea. But yeah, I only found out recently that it was an actual person called Dr. John. I genuinely thought it was a collective name.
No. There's a husband and wife, and they're both doctors, and they're local, and I know them reasonably well.
Retired.
Very nice people as well. Yeah. Really good doctors.
Have they got like kids and like Dr. Johns?
Dr. Johns.
Dr. John's got kids.
Johns. Yeah. Are they Dr. Johns as well?
They're not. I don't know what the kids do now. Actually, I only know them through rugby as well. So and through the gym.
I've never actually met them, but that is who my GP was.
Yeah. It's funny that though, isn't it?
It's funny.
But does it come back to gratitude? The fact that we have that. When you were talking about on your travels, and I know in my travels that you see the deprivation sometimes out there. That actually, how have we lost? I don't think I have. I'm quite grateful for the fact of what's given to me in that sense. Has society necessarily lost the gratitude for the fact that you, even though it's not easy and it can be complicated and you don't always get what you want, but actually you have that facility there?
I think we're incredibly lucky that we have the NHS. Although it's got faults, although it's perhaps not run as well as it could do, I think, as a citizen of the United Kingdom, I think we're incredibly lucky with what we've got. Yeah. And whilst I think we would all want better, I think no matter what we have, we always strive for better and want better and all that kind of stuff. But no, I think we're incredibly lucky, to be honest. What do you think?
I'm sitting here thinking, have we been spoilt in some ways? That's going through my mind. But then I'm also aware of like the problems that that people have in their lives. I think it's interesting when you travel a lot, because what I've definitely noticed is. And there's been lots of studies about this, is that, your quality of life doesn't equate happiness, or rather the money that you have in life doesn't equate happiness. Walking around the mountains in the Himalayas and you see families outside and they're laughing, or you speak to people, the most jovial people in the world, happy with their little box TV and just very excitable. And it sounds like patronizing this, doesn't it? But, And in Africa as well, the people that took us up Kilimanjaro, everyone seems very happy. They seem much happier, I would say, in these countries than they are in this country. Yeah. There's a lot of unhappiness in this country that you just encounter on a daily basis, just speaking to people.
And I think there's a lot. I certainly witness that people like to moan a lot. I mean,
that's British.
It is very British. Me moaning about the fact that you can only see a GP by phoning them. That is a moan. Oh, yeah, you don't hear people moaning in the US about that, but that's because they have to pay $250 or whatever it is to go and see a GP. We get it free, and we moan about the fact we have to have a telephone appointment. But that is very British. But it's also very fortunate that we get to do that for free. At point of access, it's free, and I think we're incredibly lucky. I was chatting to somebody at the weekend who was talking about the different costs of things like IVF. In the UK, to have IVF, it's about, I think, £5,000, they were saying. In the US, it's £50,000. You're getting the same thing virtually, but that's a huge difference. And when you're talking about something like
that's a different league, though. Some people that excludes people.
That's the bit I was going to say. Is it excludes people?
But in this country, you get it for free. You get so many chances free. Yeah. It's not, then they say, really sorry, but we've done our bit now, and it's down to you to make a decision whether you can afford that. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's right or wrong. I don't know if I ever I can't make a decision about that. But
Yeah.
fundamentally, we'll find something to. Well, the country finds something to moan about.
I think that moaning has got its place, and not in
No,
a sort of,
really,
and not in a,
I've known you far too long to know that that's
not
true
in
for
a,
you.
and not in a sort of, and not just in a kind of cathartic sense. You know, we all need to debrief in life,
Yeah.
but I think, what are we paying for? You know, in society, you know, in America, we'll ask the same questions. Americans will ask the same questions. What are we paying for? What are we paying for? Do we value the NHS? Is that what we're paying for? Are we paying for defence? Are we paying? You know, what are the things that we're paying for in society? And I think that if you feel that the things that you're paying for are the important things, like the NHS, then I think that it's right to kind of to moan and complain and write letters about that and try and change the way things are. Is that not?
I think, but that's freedom of speech, and we've got that in this country, that we can do that. And I concur in that sense that actually having the right to do that is really important. But that other side of it is, do you do that and forget actually how fortunate we are? Yeah, let's face it. If you put how much you pay on your taxes, your council tax and your taxes, does that equate to the amount of times that you've been to the hospital or the dentist or treatment or this or that? Or do you know what I'm saying? And actually, probably not.
I mean, for me personally, probably not. Partly because I went to rehab, so you know, and I've been on psychiatric wards and things like that in the past.
So you're a deficit.
So I'm in deficit. But what I will say is, I do feel very grateful that I was able to, at a time in society, to be able to get those things. People can't now, and I think that those things, like, I'm very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in and to have survived the years, really. And it's taken the help of a kind of country, of society, of you know, being able to access kind of help. And people can't now. People can't access that in the same way. And so I do see that, and I do feel that it's a shame that we're at a point where I don't think I would be where I was at today if I hadn't been on a psychiatric ward 3 times and then rehab. And I know that.
But people do that still. I think there's a false view of what is out there. People are accessing those things. They do go into the psychiatric wards. They do access treatment. There is more people going into rehab than there has ever been because of Mrs. Black. I can't remember her name now. My brain's gone dead. She actually said, "Come on, guys, we've got to step up here." You know, people are inundated, but what they're doing is, because people perhaps get sicker quicker. Do you know what I'm saying? You've got a young generation of people who are taking drugs that are now killing them quicker, that actually the demand is greater. I think the demand is greater out there than it's ever been for rehab and situations like that. And I think it's very sad, but it's, you know, we're seeing we've got 24-year-olds in rehab.
I mean, that's my journey, you know. I mean, I was like sort of in my teens when I was seeing counsellors, and I was on psychiatric ward when I was 21, you know, first time, back again a year later, and then 5 years later. It's that's my journey is one of the young people, and that's my experience of growing up as well, is growing up in a town where I watched people that I went to school with die from heroin overdoses, and you know, and still those people are fighting those things. You know, some of the people that were in my generation are still fighting the kind of battle.
But I think that, you know, something, just going back to what you said earlier, and I think this is my personal view, coming back to, we have now farmed out those kind of treatments to they change the system, so there's tenders that go out, so you've got big companies like Turning Point, CGL, various other bits and pieces, and some of them are very hit and miss. Some of them do it's a bit like the energy companies. Some of them do a fantastic job over fantastic, blah, blah, blah. And some of them don't do such you might go to one part of the country and you have a fantastic one, and another part of the country where you don't. And I think it is hit and miss. You know, how many people have we seen from your neck of the woods in the last 2-3 years? None.
I think
because they can't get the funding.
It's not that. It's just whoever's got the funding pocket in their hand is not directing them to the places, because they just don't. Some people go into these jobs and don't even know what they're doing.
I know that the funding is difficult though, because there's people back home that have been trying to get into places and they're just being they are being sent to like a cheaper place. They're being sent to the Midlands. They've been sent to
£250 a week where you're having to ask if you can buy a tampon.
You know, you go in a kind of day. You'll go into like a rehab on a day, and then you'll be in a
which is not. It's not the best way forward.
No. I think that's not unique just to rehabs. I think that's the same for a lot of NHS related services. Using my mum as a really good example. You know, she had a stroke. And she's on a Facebook group of stroke survivors, and she's seeing that the level of care and the level of treatment that you get varies massively up and down the country. You know, I'm not sure where, but in some parts of the country you get physio for much longer than you do in Somerset. In some places you get the opportunity. In fact, in Somerset you get the opportunity to go and do hydrotherapy in a swimming pool. You don't in other areas. In other areas you get more equipment than you do. And you think, well, when you start looking at that, you think, well, why isn't it a level playing field? There's pros and cons.
It's supposed to be. And if you look at the CQC, it is CQC. CQC are supposed to be out there monitoring that and making sure that does. So you do have so you go to the dentist, you know what you're going to get happen. You go into rehab, you know you're going to get the same rehab as I'm going to get the same rehab. But actually, sadly, consistency doesn't arise. And
well, whoever runs McDonald's, maybe we should get them to run the NHS. Because you go to a McDonald's in the middle of London and you ask for a chicken sandwich, you know what you're going to get. You go to one in Cornwall. In fact, you go to one in Paris, it's the same. It's the same thing.
But making a burger is not the same as looking after somebody's welfare.
Of course it's not, but it's the type of facility,
kind of
type of service. And it should be the same.
See, it should be the same, and it should be standardised to some degree, although it can't be because it's individuals.
Of course. It's person-centred, isn't it?
But I think, I don't know. This is like the argument against privatisation, nationalisation. I don't know. It's a shame that it is the way that it is, that it isn't standardised. And unfortunately, because of that, the people who are in the problem, whatever the health problem is, are suffering.
The victims. They're the victims.
They're the victims. And I don't know what you do about that. I don't know how you.
Unfortunately, I think it's one of those things that is not going to change overnight.
I think you accept that there is some level of that because humans are running it. We're all fallible, and it isn't. Some people aren't as good at it as other people, and that's just life. And so, unfortunately, that means that funding needs are greater. And then you have to hope that you get lucky and land in, some warehouse, as my experience was. And, and it is about where you go, but it isn't just about that, is it? It's about your attitude
towards it.
It's about what you're doing.
It was a bit like going to the physio. They're giving you exercises and then you go home and not doing them. It's exactly the same, except, and the reality is it will get worse if you don't do it. And how many people do we see that? I'm just really aware of time, and I don't think we've probably taken up more than enough of your time.
It's been a really good discussion.
It's been interesting, hasn't it? It's not gone the way I thought it would have gone.
Well, I'd love to get you back to talk about your excursions. I think it's probably
I think that would be really good to do that.
You back, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Do you want to do the question?
Yeah, let's do the question. So, what is your goal, aspiration, achievement for the next 12 months, so that we can come back to you and see if you've achieved it?
Well, first and foremost, it is making sure that the second Burnham Book Festival kind of goes smoothly. I thought about this question because I've seen the podcast now. So, but I, to be honest with you, that is the main thing, because I feel like this year has been like amazing. I've done like the most incredible things, like mountains here, there, and everywhere. So many different countries and massive family holidays, big kind of like bonding times, and as well as the book festival. And I feel like it's just been a good year. So I'm sort of not putting too much pressure on myself, especially as I'm in an existential crisis at the moment.
Brilliant. Just tell us where can we find out more information about the book festival?
So it will be on Facebook, on Twitter. If you just put Burnham Book Festival, it
comes up, doesn't
it? Instagram. And if anyone reads Burnham-on-Sea.com, it will come upon that.
And what about your books?
So books, as it stands, are still the two.
How could people find out about you?
Well, you can go on Facebook again or Instagram and look up Lewis Charles Coleman. My book's available on Amazon, Drinking the Moon and Out the Size, and hopefully there'll be another one soon, but we'll see. No pressure.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.